Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'd dedicate this morning's learning in memory of my mother, Mrs. Shalom Rabinowitz, Shalom Bas Rabbi Yaakov Eliezer. And we are in Perek Aleph, Chapter 1, Mishna Hey, Mishna 5. Okay, so a little introduction before we begin this Mishnah that I read to you here from the Art Scroll. The first part of our Mishnah deals with a case of layering. One of the branches of a fruit tree, say a grapevine, is bent down to the ground, where the middle of that branch is then buried so that it will develop its own roots. One end of the branch remains connected to the original vine, which is referred to as the parent, and the other free end rises from the ground as if it were a separate vine. You take the vine, it's still connected to the original parent vine, you put it into the ground, and then it comes up. When the new roots are sufficiently developed, the branch is severed from the parent, at which point the layered branch becomes a completely separate grapevine. So that's the discussion here. And one can understand that the question is going to be, what's the status of that new vine once it becomes disconnected, or even before it's disconnected? All right. So Elon Shenekar, Uvay Brecha, a tree that became uprooted, but it has connected to it a layered branch. So what's happening is that originally you had, let's say again, a vine, and you took one of the branches and you layered it, and it came up the other end, and then it already went ahead and it already developed its own roots. Now, here's something that we have to keep in mind. As long as the layered branch remains connected to the parent, it is considered part of the parent, even if the branch is also drawing nourishment from its own roots. Therefore, if the parent is more than 3 years old, even the branch's fruits are not subject to Harah. So here's another thing you have to bear in mind. Even if the branch that was layered has already grown its own roots into the ground, as long as it's still connected to the parent branch, to the parent tree, to the parent, it's still considered nourishing from the parent tree, for the parent, and therefore, therefore we say that it has a status like the original tree. If the original tree, the parent tree, already went through 3 years of Arla, then this new branch may be growing new fruit. It's still connected to the original parent branch, and therefore it's not considered Arla. Okay, so that's a premise we have to keep in mind. That even though it's already created its own branches, if it's still connected to the first tree, the halacha is going to be that, 1 second. Yeah, the halacha is going to be that that has the status of the old tree. In our case, what happened is like this. The parent tree became uprooted completely. Okay, so you have this uprooted parent, then you still have the branch that was layered, has already grown its own roots and coming up on the other end, growing its own fruits. Now, v'hu chaya mimena, and the tree that became uprooted is actually sustaining itself through the layered branch. Chazra zakena liyos kabrecha, the old tree now takes on the status of the new tree. So what really happens is like this. And this is going to be more explicitly stated in the next part of the Mishnah. But that is that as we said in our first introduction, if the layered branch takes root and then you sever it from the original branch, it's its own new tree. Now, in this case, it wasn't severed from the original parent, but the parent became uprooted. So now it's not nourishing from the parent branch. It's nourishing on its own. It's as if it was severed from it. And therefore, once it becomes severed from it, it becomes like a new tree, and you start counting Arla from that. But in this case, what happens is that being that the old tree was uprooted, so it's not giving any nourishment anymore. But actually, it's taking nourishment from the layered branch, which has roots in the ground. So then the old tree now becomes like a new tree. If it's getting sustained off the layered branch, which is the new tree, then it's considered part of that new tree. And although originally you already went through 3 years of Arla for it, you got to start over again. Because now it's not an old tree anymore. It gets the status of a new tree because it's been uprooted. It's nourishing from the layered branch. So it's like it's been replanted, and it's like being replanted in a new place. Whereas we learned previously, Arla applies. Okay, so that's what it means when the Mishnah says, again, Ilan Shenakar by Brecha, a tree that becomes uprooted and it has a layered branch connected to it. Vuchaya mimena, and the old tree is sustaining itself off the layered branch. Chazra zakena liyos kabrecha. The old tree now becomes like the layered branch, and Arla will apply. Now, hechricha shana achar shana. You layered it year after year. So what that means is like this. You start off with the original parent, and you layered a branch. You put it through the ground, and it came up, right? It came up. Then you layered a branch from the first layered branch, and it created a second layer branch. And then you did the same thing from a second to a third. So you've got the parent branch, you've got the first layered branch, the second layered branch, and the third layered branch. That's what it means to you layered it year after year. Okay? Vinifsika. And then the first layered branch was cut off from the parent. You begin counting Arla from the point of when it was cut off. Until it was cut off, they're all connected to the parent branch. And therefore, the halacha is there's no Arla for anything that grows from them. But once it comes out that the first branch was cut off, so now that it's cut off, it's a new tree. And all the other things connected to it are going to be new trees too. And therefore, at that point, you start counting Arla for all of them. This is where the Mishnah basically spells out that once you cut it off from the parent, it takes on its own status. Now we have another case. And for this case, we need another introduction. Another cultivation technique is grafting. The planter takes a branch from one tree and grafts that branch onto a different tree. That different tree is called the rootstock. The grafted branch then draws nourishment from the rootstock. The Mishnah discusses a special case of grafting, namely where the grafted branch is grafted onto the rootstock but remains attached as well to its original tree. Okay, and it'll be more complicated than that. Okay, sipuk hakafanim, which means extending a grapevine. Extending means you took one of the branches of a grapevine, still connected to the parent. He grafted it onto another branch, which is called the rootstock. Okay, he grafted it onto another completely separate grapevine branch. Then v'sipuk agabi sipuk. And then you did an extension on top of an extension, which means that you took a branch from the rootstock and you grafted it back onto the parent tree of the stock that was grafted before. Okay, so let's just call it the parent. Got the parent grapevine. You're taking a branch, grafting it onto the rootstock. It's still connected to the first one. And then you're taking a branch from the rootstock and grafting it onto the parent while it's still connected to the rootstock. Now, not only did you do grafting, you actually layer them into the ground also. Okay, so what's the status here? How do we look at things here? The answer is mutter. According to the Tanakama, they're still connected to the parent tree. Well, since they're both connected to the parent trees, either the original parent or the rootstock that became a parent, and those both already had gone through Arla, so whatever grows out of these new branches is going to be permissible. Rabbi Meir says, where the strength of the extended vine is strong, okay, where maka means where, in the case, that the extended vines, let me just make him saying this right, where the strength of the extended vine, where the strength of the extended vine is strong, then it is mutter, then it's permissible. But where the strength of the extended vine is weak, so then we say it's permitted. Now, what does it mean, weak or strong? So weak or strong means the following. If the extended vine is still drawing most of its nourishment from the parent, to which is still connected, then it's going to be just like the parent. But if where the strength of the vine is weak, that it's not drawing its main nourishment from the parent, it's forbidden to eat the fruits that will grow now from the vine, because it's considered replanted in the rootstock onto which it has been grafted. Okay, even though it's still connected to its parent. So really what's happening is like this. The rootstock is a new tree. The rootstock is not a tree that already has gone through 3 years. That was a mistake I made before. That's not the case, right? It's grafted onto the rootstock. That's where it's grafted. And the rootstock has the original growing grafted onto the parent. And not only that, you even decided to layer it. So in this case, where we're talking about that there's grafting involved, then basically, in either case, according to Reb Meir, where they are connected still to the parent, so according to Reb Meir, where, and I guess this is something that we can tell, in a situation where the grafted branch is getting its it's mainly being nourished from the parent. It'll have the status of the parent. There'll be no law of Arla. But where it's not getting its main nourishment from that, it's going to get its main nourishment from the rootstock. I guess we can even say maybe it's getting its main nourishment from the ground. But I don't know if that's good. I shouldn't say that, because here the point is you're grafting it. That's for sure contributing. So where the point is that it's not gaining its main nourishment from the parent, but it's gaining its main nourishment from the rootstock. So then we say that it's going to be forbidden according to Reb Meir. So according to the Tanakama, as long as it's still connected to the parent and getting some nourishment from it, then it has the status of the parent, and there's no law of Arla applying. But if, according to wait a minute. So according to the Tanakama, no matter what, whether it's getting its main nourishment from the parent or not, as long as it's connected to the parent, as the status of the parent. But if, right, according to Reb Meir, though, depends. If the grafted branch is still getting its main nourishment from the parent, then it has the status of the parent. If it's not, then it has the status of the rootstock. Okay? Just 1 second. Okay. The last case is the following. What happens to a grafted branch that got cut off from the parent, but it already grew fruit? Till now, we didn't necessarily talk about the case. Until now, we want to know what's the status of the branch. And the branch has not sprouted any new fruit. Okay, so now we want to know what's the status of the branch. Once it gets cut off from the parent, it's like a new branch. But here the case is that where the layered branch got cut off, it already had grown fruit on it. It grew fruit on it when it was still connected to the parent. So what happens then? Says the Mishna, if it increases, it grew 1/200th more, again from its own roots, so then it becomes forbidden. So that means like this. That means that you've got this layered branch. The layered branch itself started growing fruit. When it grew the fruit, it was still connected to the parent. There's no law of Arla. But then you disconnected it. Then you cut it off. You severed it. So that means now it's a whole new tree. But the fruit is from before. So whatever grew from before it was severed is not Arla. The issue is, though, what about if I go ahead and I take off that fruit? So I'm good. What if I left it on after it was severed? So then what's growing more should be Arla. And I'm going to have a situation of fruit that has a part of it that's Arla, part of it that's not Arla. Now, the halacha is when it comes to Arla, let's say I have a case of Arla fruit that gets mixed together with not Arla fruit. So the Chamim said in order for the Arla to become nullified in the majority or in the amount that's more, you need 200 times more. You need up to 200. You need 200 times more to go ahead and nullify it. That's what you need to nullify Arla. So now, in our case of the Mishnah, the new amount that's growing, which is Arla, is considered mixed with the other part that's not Arla. And if I have 200 times more of the old part than the new part is nullified. But once it comes to the point that I don't have 200 times more, then I'm left with a fruit that has part of it that is Arla, part of it's not Arla, it's going to become forbidden. So that's what the Mishnah means when it says, if I have a layered branch that became severed, and it already it's already full of fruit, if it grew more to the point that you have more than one part to 200 parts of the newly grown part of the fruit, also it's going to be forbidden, because once I don't have the ratio of 200 to 1, the permissible to the non-permissible, if I don't have that ratio anymore, then the Arla part is not nullified. The fruit has permissible part, non-permissible part, and therefore I can't eat it. We continue with the laws of Rechilas, the Chavetz Chaim, Klal Aleph, chapter 1, Siftes, paragraph 9. V'da, and no, says the Chavetz Chaim, even if you don't tell the person the actual name of the person who spoke about it, okay? Ruvain wants to know, or Levi's going to come tell Ruvain about someone who said something about him or someone who did something to him. But he's not telling him who it is. You just tell him someone did this to you, someone said this about you. However, but through your story, it becomes known who it is, meaning he figures out who it is. Just based on, you say, so-and-so did this and this. Well, if he did this and this, it had to have been that person. So you didn't say the name of the person, but at the end of the day, you gave him enough information to realize who the person is. That's considered rechilas. Let's say Reuben already knows, okay? Reuben already knows someone did this to him, okay? He knows someone did something to him. But doesn't know who did it or who said it about him. Now this guy comes and says, and he shows him in a hinting way, in an indirect way, he shows him that he should figure out who it is. It's also forbidden. So even if you know that you already were spoken about or damaged in some way by someone, but you don't know who it is. Now someone else comes and indirectly helps you figure out who it was, that is considered a chilas of that person's part. Have a wonderful day. A good night.